In this tutorial, we're going to be covering our last portion of our Next.js playlist series, which is going to be optimization. And after this, we're going to build a full stack application with everything we learned. Hello guys, I'm Oliver. I'll be going over this tutorial. If you're new to the channel, make sure you check my other tutorial as well. It's on my YouTube. So let's dive into about optimization in Next.js. Now, Next.js does a lot of work behind the scene and it does a lot of optimization for you. So we don't need to maybe configure a lot of different things for optimization, but it is really important to understand some of the optimization that Next.js is doing for you, so you can leverage some new ideas into your application to make it even perform better. So first thing first, just to know, Next.js comes with a variety of built-in optimization to improve your application speed. And there's like a couple of things that we need to know in terms of what evaluate this speed. And they have a really nice diagram over here that shows you the three most important things. First one is the largest contentful paint. This is basically the biggest painting you have in your web application. So when your website first load, it does some kind of a painting, and there's some large things you have on a website that takes a little bit of time to do the loading. For example, a large main image, a video you have on a website, it could take a lot of time to kind of paint those things. So you want to optimize that. The second part is the first input delay, which is like a delay you have when a website load at the first time. There's some ways you can optimize that as well. And the last, and I think this is the most important part of all, is like cumulative layout shift. This measures the visual stability. So when you have some images, if you don't use this image component given by Next.js, you will have, like, if you use something like the old image, which is img given by HTML, if you use this, you won't have that optimization. You will have a cumulative layout shift. That means these images will take a little bit time to load, and once it load, it will shift your text down a little bit. So you have like a layout shift happening in the web page, which is not good at all. So that's a big part of it, of optimizing your application, and Next.js does a lot of cool job behind the scene. So to start off, the first thing you have to do for optimization is definitely the images. We're gonna tackling that. So what do you do when it comes to images? So image optimization actually happen behind the scene for you. This image component does a lot of stuff for you. So let's download an image from Unsplash and we can maybe dive into it. So I'm in Unsplash. I'm gonna search something called landscape. There we go. We have a landscape, and then I'll just grab maybe this picture right here. Download for free. So I downloaded that image and I pasted it on the public folder. And one thing I want to show you is the size of it. So size of the image right now is 5.84 megabyte. That's like the original size of the image, and it is pasted on the public, and I renamed it to background.jpg. So let's start our server. Before we start our server, we want to change our branch. So we are in the styling branch, which is from the previous lesson. I'm going to move to a different branch right now, and it is called Optimizations. So I switch to the optimization branch, and now what I can do is I start playing around with this. Start playing around with everything we have. So I can like npm run dev, start our server. We have it in localhost, so I'll open that server up as well. First, we are going to be using the image. So I'm going to give you a little overview. So image optimization using this component work in different ways. They have like some size optimization to automatically serve correctly sized images for each devices. I'm going to demonstrate that as well. Visual stability, it's prevents layout shift. So instead of loading the image a little bit later, it kind of gives a placeholder so it doesn't shift other things, which is really cool. Faster load time, access flexibility, so it gives you a lot outside of the box. And first thing we're gonna do is using the local image. So how you use the local image? First you do is you import local image using, I'll name it background image from public, then background image background .jpg. Hope we are in the same exact file as we want. So there we have it. And next we are going to be using that that image portion of it. So delete this, delete that, delete pretty much everything else. And then I'm going to use the image component. And for the source, I will do is background image. So let's see if it loads properly. I might have to refresh the server. Look like we have some. Okay, there we go. It's perfectly loaded. Well, let's check what happens, what the size of this image is. So we have some image, we have some size, which is the original size, and notice the size, the file size. The file size changed to 1.3 megabyte. That means from 5.3 megabyte, 5.4 megabyte, it changed to 1.3. So it did some optimization beforehand for us. If we decrease the size, so you see the size also decrease here as well to render size change, which is really cool, and it does some kind of optimization for us. So it gives us a different image. So you have like a source set. The source set have like a original image, which is like 3840 resolution with a quality of 75, and then it changed this to quality of 75 as well, and it kind of like rendered in a different different setting there. So that's the update on that optimization, which it did behind the scene. Really cool. Now what happened if we turn on optimize? So we don't want this to optimize it. Give me the original image. Notice what happened here. 6.1 megabyte. So see the size increase, and it's giving us the original image size or megabyte, 6.1 megabyte. So the original image is like 5 to 6 megabyte, and that's it's giving me here, which is not good. That means the image is really large. It's gonna take a long time to load, and this is like unoptimized version of it. By default, this component already does some optimization, which is really nice. You can also go a little bit further. You can do something like, let's do some paragraph here just to show you the layout shift. So lorem ipsum 25 here, and we have this image right here. I don't want any kind of flex box here that's causing some issues. So there we have it. So we rolled the image. It doesn't have a layout shift. It's not shifting this downward. But notice what happened when I use the regular HTML. So for the regular HTML, I have to use the old method. So I'm going to go to public, which is already on public, and background.jpg, and I'll do this here, and I'll turn this off. Notice what happened when I load. It's probably caching it right now. I'll probably have to disable the cache as well. Disable cache. I have to probably restart, just a fresh restart, so we don't load anything that was already there. So I'll delete that, and then I'll load that again. You probably might see, or maybe it's too fast, so we are not seeing it. Let's do slow 3G, and we're gonna see like a layout shift happening. So see, the text is all the way on the top, and now the image will start to load slowly, and this causes a layout shift with using this. But if I disable this part and I enable this part, which is the image component given in my Next.js, you will see like we are not having the layout shift anymore. So I have to like reset it again just to make sure we did it properly. So see, it's already have a height and width set to it because this component already does a height and width. If you're importing a local image, like a static image from a public folder, it will automatically determine the height and width, and that's why the layout shift is not happening on this. So I refresh it again. You see the layout shift is not happening. The text is down here. But with that, the text was all the way up there. So it already doing that optimization, which is really cool. You can go a little bit step further. You can do like a placeholder as well. Holder, I will say a blur. And then you're gonna see, I'll change it to a little faster. So blur will give us a thumbnail here, a blur thumbnail, and then it will load the image, which is really nice. I think it does a great job on that part. I think no throttling. You can see the blur is there for a second, so which is really hands-on. And one thing I also want to make sure, because the blur, they have like a SVG generated for you. That's the blur SVG that kind of stay on top of it, stay beneath it before it load. And one thing to go back to is that they have automatically serve correctly sized images for each devices. Now, how do we know that? We can actually use something called a sizes prop, and then we can do full 100 view weight, and you will see that if I decrease it, a new image will appear. Maybe I have to like load it again. So I use a size prop here, which is going to have different sizes for the viewport. And you can see if we go to the element, it already generated all kinds of sizes for different viewport. So if we increase the size, it will use that image. If we decrease the size, if you are in 1920, it will use that image, which is a little bit lower in size, like 82 kilobyte. The lower we go, the size kind of changes to 50 kilobyte, and then 50 is the lowest one we have, and the highest size have 82. If we go even lower, that will be the 82 kilobyte, which is the optimized image. Well, you can see there's one more generated, which is 134 kilobyte, which is good. And that's how it works. So the more resolution you attach to yourself, you can see the image being generated here as well. If you go higher, you generate a new image, which is a different size, different height and width. And that's how it gives you different images for different viewport, which is already optimized for you automatically for you. So really good optimization. And there's a couple of other things in order you use images. There's a remote images. So when you have a remote image, you need to specify the height and width. If you do not specify, it won't be able to load, because with the local image, the component is able to read the image before it uploads it. But with the remote image, if you have a remote image for Unsplash API or Unsplash website, you will need to provide this. But in some cases, let's say for example, we don't know. Let's do the same image as well. Like in some cases, you won't be able to find the height and width. So what you do in that situation? So let me show you one thing here. So I will do that, and then I'll paste in the API. I also need to, of course, it will gonna show throw me some error. The first error is going to be the width property. You don't have the width property here. So I'm going to write it down here, and I'm going to bring that original content back up, making sure we know the exact height and width. So this is the height and width of the image. So I'll say that here, 5979, and then height is going to be 3986, and we have that. So we have height and width, and next we have to know is host images. So we can, it's a configuration for next images. So I'll do images, domain, and here I'll paste in that host name. I have to restart the server. So that is to let Next.js know this is the domain we're using for the images, remote images. And here we're using remote images. I'll paste the text over here. I'll disable that as well. So let's see, it's working. So image load, this is a remote image from a URL standpoint. So if I go to element, you see it's coming from a URL, and they're already optimized as well. Now, one thing to note, if you don't have this, what do you do? So if you don't know the size of it, you can bypass it by using something called fill. So you can like comment that out and it's gonna show me some error for sure, but I can do something called fill. Uh, fill. Fill is equal to true, and it's going to fill it. Now that is not the right kind of fill we want, so we want to use some kind of class from uh, Tailwind. So object, we'll do object cover, and we can do here is relative. We don't need this here for now because it already does it for us at the optimization. So I'll keep that up, and height is equal to 96, just to adjust a little bit. So you can see it does the fill for us, and we didn't need to specify any height and width. So if you're using a remote image and if you don't know the height and width, you can use this fill to do it, or you can like use the regular resolution like 120 or 1920, 1930, whatever resolution you have, 1920 resolution, you just paste that in. Otherwise you can use fill to bypass that portion of it. So that's about the styling and the responsiveness. So we did this. That was also a good part of it. So it does things for us. And with the fill, I think it automatically does that responsive image for us as well. So see in here, we use just the fill, and it's already generating all the different kind of URL for different resolution, which is really cool. If I go to the network, I increase the size, decrease the size, it will generate different images for different resolution, which is also a good part about using fill. It kind of shows you on a network. So one last thing I want to talk about is the priority here. So this is like the largest contentful paint. So remember we looked into this. We we fixed the cumulative layout shift. We showed you how to do that, how to do the fix, which is this already does for us. You can also go a little bit beyond by using some placeholder blur, some sizes. But for the largest contentful paint, how you fix that? You use something called priority. So like this. Priority, you just turn that on and it will be prioritized. And it will be the first painting that loads, so that doesn't shift anything on a page, which is really cool. So if you are willing to tackle this part, you use something called priority props, which is nice. And LCB elements to the largest images, and you only do it on the largest image, by the way. So if you have a very large image on a front page, you want to be using priority on that page, on that image. So yep, it's our text block visible within the viewport when you run. So you use the priority props just like this. So that's all about the images. I think you understood this in more details of how Next.js work in terms of images. Or regular HTML, you would never want to use this because this doesn't solve any kind of optimization. It produces cumulative layout shift, which is not good. It does a lot of harm with all the other web vital as well. So you want to avoid this all the time. Always use this. You can use placeholder blur just in case. It does a really nice job. And you can use sizes as well and fill property. I showed you how to do static. So this is a static image from our public, and this is a remote image from a source outside of our application. So that's about the image. Let's jump into the font. So for the font optimization, I think Next.js done a really awesome job when it came to optimization. The font, Next.js font component will automatically optimize your font, including custom font, and remove external network requests for improved privacy and performance, which is really good. And Next.js also, the Next.js font include built-in automatic self-hosting. So that means you can optimally load web front with zero layout shift, like we talked about on the image. So it automatically does the size adjustment for us, so we don't have to do anything out of the box. We just specify what kind of font we want, and it automatically does that optimization for us. Like we talked about on the image, we have to, it already does the layout shape optimization for us, but we can also customize it a little bit further. But for the font, we don't have to do anything. And one cool part about the font is the Google font already comes with the whole component. That means the new font system allow you to use all Google font with all the performance in mind, and no requests are sent to Google by the browser. So it comes right out of the box, which is really awesome. Like, it's really cool to use that. So first thing first is they recommend something called variable fonts. So variable fonts are all these fonts listed in here. If you're using variable font, you can do this. So we can go to our layout sheet and see they included next/font/Google, and they imported the inter, and then they just added the subset, and that's it. That's all they did for the variable font. You don't need to specify the font weight. Like, if you use any font from here, you don't need to specify the weight. You can like specify the weight later down the road, which is a little easier. And yeah, that's how it works. So what you do is you do inter, and then you import that inter, and then you type in the subset, and you can like do inter.class name here, and you can turn that into bold by using tailwind classes down the line on the pages as well. So that's the thing on the font. Now, what if we want to use something other than the variable font? So any font that's not listed here, what if we want to use that? You have to do one thing. You have to just add the weight in here. So right here, you just add the weight, and that should be it. That's the only thing you need to do when you're using a non-variable font. And yep, it already does some optimization for you. You can also do some styling. You can bring in some styling optimization. You can also specify a subset, which is the Latin subset here. It already did it for us. And you can use a multiple font. The way they use it, they have a font folder, and they imported 2 different fonts. If you're using a space, you have to do underscore here. So you generated 2 font into a font folder, and then you can use that font, import that font from the layout, from the font folder, and put it on the layout. And if on a different page, if you want to use Roboto Mono, you can like import this part, which is on the font folder here, font file here, and you can like add it in there just like that. Class name, whatever here, the font name dot class name, and it should automatically apply to that specific page, which is really nice. And I think font optimization, there's not much to talk about. You can also do local font like that. You can, where the source is going to be in the public. So yeah, you can optimize the source in here, and you can do the same thing here, dot class name with the local font. But the font, any kind of optimization, it already does it for us, so we don't need to specify any kind of optimization for font. The script, next part, the script, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. Like we are not really going to be using script, but to load third-party script for multiple routes, import next script from script, and then you kind of like wrap that script into that source. So this script is already doing some optimization for us. And one of the biggest script optimization is happening is where the delay and also the cumulative layout shift for that as well. So it's mostly on the delay part of it. But yeah, I mean, the script already does some optimization for you, and you don't need to, you can like add a different functionality here, like on load, on ready, on error. But we are rarely going to be using a script because it's built on React, so we're going to be using component instead of totally separate script. So that's just there, it is to mention. I think you can use that. The next part, we're going to be talking about the metadata, and I think we have a metadata here on the layout. It does a really cool job. Like, it's really important that you have a metadata on all your pages. Like in here we didn't add it, but you should be adding metadata in all your pages. it helps with the Google search engine. And since Next.js is server-side vendor, you need to take advantage of the metadata. So here's how it is. Next.js has a metadata data that can be used to define your application metadata for improved SEO. They only added the title and description, but you can go above and beyond. So there are two ways you can add metadata to your application. It's like this, which is export a metadata object, and also this export a static metadata object, or for dynamic generate metadata function in layout, you can create a generate metadata function like this. They created over here. You can create something similar to this to generate metadata for you automatically. But static goes a long way. You can also do a file-based dynamically generate special file to route segment. You can do that as well. But this is it to configure the metadata. We're not going to look into dynamic metadata, but the most important part about the metadata is you can go above and beyond just the title and the description, because they have like a lot of big API that you can add into to give it a bit more context. So let's see where we can go into the metadata object. So all the parameter you can use is right over here. The parameter generate metadata, and you can see a title. We can do a title here. We can also go above description and all the other basic fields, which is right here: keyword, author, creator, publisher. So I highly recommend you add everything you can. And also on the head, you can also add something in here. We can like copy paste this, and you can add it on the HTML head like that. So that will also be another optimization you can do for your main page, which is really a good way to do it. And yep, that's it. That's the metadata. I think you can go into more details. I also have a full stack application, full stack Next.js course. I did do some dynamic metadata there as well, so check that out. And the next part we're going to be looking into is the static asset. So all the static assets should be in the public folder. You will have static should be in this public folder. This is like a mandatory name. So static folder images under the public in the root directory, and this is like a mandatory name for it. So yeah, it does some kind of optimization for us, and you don't need to create a different file for it to do that static asset. Some lazy loading, Next.js automatically does lazy loading for us. We talked about those lazy loading in our previous lectures, and yeah, we also did some explanation on that, how we can improve it. But here you can see you can also do some dynamic import, and you can do some lazy loading on the dynamic import to kind of gives you a little bit more leverage on the optimization. And this is only for client component. You can do that dynamic import, which is going to help you with the lazy loading suspense for your incremental migration. So that way only small pieces and chunks of your components are loaded when they're needed, instead of loading everything all at once. So we dived into that in a lot in the previous lecture. So if you can go into that or more details, be sure to check that out. And yeah, that's it. I think the other cool part is the Next.js come with analytics. So if you are able to deploy through Vercel, if you deploy a Next.js app through Vercel, they're gonna include some analytics for you. It's really cool to see some of the analytics they provide, and it's very noteworthy on how we can improve different things. So similar to Google Analytics, I think they have a little bit more readable dashboard. So I really like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the lecture on the optimization. And you can start playing around with it, but most of the time Next.js does the optimization for you, so you don't have to write any extra custom code. But you can definitely go above and beyond for optimization by writing custom code for like dynamic generation, metadata. You can also create your own loader. Like they use a loader, their own loader. You can optimize out of it and you use your own loader by using a loader and then paste in your loader function. You could do that, but those are really more advanced lessons. So I will just leave it to Next.js to handle the optimization, because they do a great job for it. And yep, I hope you guys have a lot of fun working through this playlist and learned a lot all about the Next.js. I went through all this information in all my tutorial series, in this tutorial series. And this is the last tutorial series for this whole Next.js playlist, and this is the optimization one. Next, we're going to be building our application using everything we learned so far. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and wait for the next lesson to drop, and I'll see you there.